Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, be sure to drop your thoughts, feelings, and lessons in the comments below. Like the video and subscribe so you never miss stories like this. Let's get into it. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but nobody talk about how preparing it requires patience, restraint, and the kind of focus most people do not have. I learned that the hard way when I discovered my wife was sleeping with her boss. I did not cry, beg, or bargain. I decided to dismantle his entire empire and take the one thing he believed could not be touched. His wife turned out to be the nuclear option I never knew I needed. By the end, both of them were pleading in ways that still make me smile on quiet nights. My name is Damian Cross, and I am the person corporations call when they need scandals buried so deep even forensic accountants cannot find the bodies. I spent 15 years in crisis management and corporate security, which means I know how to spot a lie, track digital footprints, and destroy someone's life using nothing but their own mistakes. The irony is that those same skills I used to protect companies became the exact tools I needed when my own world went sideways. Chicago winters are brutal, but nothing chills you quite like realizing your spouse is laughing at you behind your back. It started on a Wednesday in October, when I came back to our Chicago penthouse a day early from a business trip to New York. I had wrapped up negotiations with a pharmaceutical company faster than expected, containing an insider trading mess before the SEC could get interested. The flight home was smooth, and I decided not to call my wife, Brianna, because I wanted to surprise her with a limited edition Chanel bag I picked up at duty free. She had been dropping hints for weeks. Despite everything, I still believe making her happy mattered. That should tell you how blind a man can become when comfort replaces vigilance. The moment I walked into our place, something felt wrong. You develop instincts in my line of work, a sixth sense for when an environment has been disturbed. The air held traces of expensive cologne that was not mine, something woody with bergamot that probably cost hundreds an ounce. One of the dining chairs was pulled out at an odd angle. There was a damp spot on the Persian rug near the couch that had not been there when I left. These were not obvious red flags to most people, but I trained myself to notice the details others miss. I set my luggage down quietly and moved through the apartment methodically, cataloging every anomaly. The bedroom was immaculate, which was suspicious because Brianna usually left clothes scattered when she was alone. The bathroom counter looked wiped down too carefully. In the sink, there were 2 wine glasses instead of 1. The Bordeaux I had been saving for our anniversary was half empty. My heart started beating faster, not from panic, but from the cold professional focus that kicks in when you realize you might be standing in hostile territory. I checked our security cameras from my phone and found the feed disabled remotely. That required technical knowledge Brianna did not have, which meant whoever had been here knew what he was doing. Her phone was charging on the nightstand, which was a mistake on her part. Brianna was normally glued to that device, constantly checking messages and social media. I picked it up and felt a familiar weight in my hand, knowing that in about 30 seconds I would either confirm my suspicion or feel like an idiot for doubting her. The passcode was our anniversary date, which suddenly felt like a cruel joke. I unlocked it and went straight to her messages. What I found turned my blood to ice water. Months of messages between Brianna and Cedric Vaughn, her boss and the CEO of Vaughn Media. Cedric was a legend in Chicago business circles, one of those self-made billionaires who owned half the city's media outlets and had politicians on speed dial. I had met him twice at company events, shook his hand, made small talk about market trends while he looked at me with a practiced smile that never reached his eyes. He was 50, silver hair always perfect, watches worth more than most people's cars, and he'd been inside my wife more times than I could count. But it was not just the affair that hit me. I have seen enough corporate scandals to know powerful people cheat. What burned was a contempt in their messages. Cedric called me the guard dog, and your boring husband who thinks he's tough. Brianna complained that I was too rigid, too emotionally unavailable, that I cared more about work than her feelings. She told him I was adequate in bed, but predictable, a detail I could have lived without reading. They mocked my clothes, my habits, even the way I preferred bourbon over wine. Reading those messages felt like watching my own execution and realizing people holding the weapons were the ones I trusted. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding her phone, and something shifted inside me. The old Damien, the one who believed in vows and second chances, died in that moment. What replaced him was a predator I normally kept caged for work. The part of me that knew how to identify weaknesses and exploit them without mercy. Divorce would have been too clean. Cedric Vaughn had everything. Money, power, a beautiful wife, a media empire that made him feel untouchable. He thought he could take what was mine and face no consequences because men like him rarely do. But he made one critical mistake. He went after someone who destroys people professionally. I spent the next 2 hours going through every message, screenshot, and photo they exchanged. The affair had been going on for 7 months, starting at a corporate retreat in Aspen where Brianna had been too drunk and Cedric had been too available. They met in his office, in hotel rooms, and once in our vacation home in Lake Geneva, when I was supposedly stuck on a client call. Her deception was thorough. Late nights, girls' weekends, business trips that never happened. Every kiss goodbye and every "I love you" she gave me during those months was contaminated. But buried in the messages was something even more valuable than proof of infidelity. Cedric had been careless, discussing business matters he never should have typed. He mentioned moving money from his wife's charitable foundation to cover gambling losses. He complained about the board questioning his expenses. He bragged about trades that regulators would kill to see documented. This was not just an affair. It was a roadmap to his destruction. And his wife, Yvette Vaughn, a former prosecutor who now ran that charitable foundation, had no idea her husband was robbing her blind to fund his addiction to high-stakes poker games and private clubs. I heard the elevator ding in the hallway and quickly put Brianna's phone back exactly where I found it. The door opened, and Brianna walked in carrying shopping bags from Michigan Avenue. Her hair was perfect. Her designer dress probably paid for what money Cedric had made easy for her. She looked surprised to see me, and I watched her face cycle through confusion, fear, then forced happiness in about 2 seconds. That was when I knew she understood, on some level, that she had been sloppy and the walls might be closing in. "Damien, oh my God, you're home early," she said, rushing over to kiss me. I let her, tasting the lie on her lips while my mind was already planning. She asked if the Philadelphia deal closed early. "New York," I corrected calmly. And yes, they signed faster than expected once I showed them what would happen if they didn't. I studied her face, noting the micro-expressions she could not hide, guilt, anxiety, and relief that I was playing along. "I picked you up something at the airport," I said, pointing toward my bag. She squealed and dove the Chanel bag like it was a holiday. I felt nothing watching her happiness. This was a woman who had shared my bed for 5 years, knew my coffee order, met my dying father in the hospital, and she could lie to my face without a crack in her performance. I realized I had never truly known her. I had loved an illusion designed to extract resources and status from my life. We had dinner that night, expensive sushi from our favorite downtown spot. Brianna talked about her day, complained about deadlines, and mentioned Cedric's name 3 times in casual conversation, like she was testing me. I smiled, nodded, asked polite questions, and played the supportive husband while internally calculating the exact sequence of moves that would leave both her and her lover with nothing. She had no idea she was sitting across from a loaded weapon with the safety off. Later in bed, she tried to initiate intimacy, and I had to dig deep into my professional training not to recoil. I made excuses about travel exhaustion and an early meeting. She looked hurt for 5 seconds before rolling over and checking her phone, likely texting Cedric about how I was too tired for her again. I lay awake in the darkness, listening to her breathe, planning the systematic destruction of everyone who betrayed me while she slept peacefully beside me. The next morning, I did not go to my office first. Instead, I drove to the south side of Chicago where old connections still operated in gray spaces most executives pretend do not exist. There's an entire ecosystem of information brokers, cybersecurity specialists, and digital forensics experts who do work legitimate firms will not touch. I had helped several of them avoid legal disasters over the years, which meant they owed me favors that could be called in without questions. The kind of favors that involve breaking into secure servers and extracting information that can end careers. Kendrick Webb ran a small operation out of a converted warehouse that looked abandoned outside, but housed serious computing equipment inside. He was a genius with digital systems, the kind of man who could break into nearly anything if motivated, but preferred corporate targets because the money was better and the attention was lower. I had gotten him out of a situation 5 years ago involving cryptocurrency theft charges that could have ruined him. He took one look at my face when I walked in and knew I was not there for a social call. "Damian Cross," he said, spinning in his chair, surrounded by monitors. "You've got that look. Someone needs to disappear digitally, or you need dirt on someone important." "Both," I replied, and laid out exactly what I needed. I want complete access to Cedric Vaughn's private servers, his financial records, his communications, everything he thinks is secure behind corporate firewalls and encryption. And I need it without any trace leading back to me or you. Kendrick whistled low. "Cedric Vaughn, you do not think small. Vaughn Media Security is probably military grade. This will cost you and take time to crack quietly. You have 24 hours, I said, sliding an envelope across his desk containing $50,000 in cash. And there's another 50 when you deliver. His wife's foundation servers, too. I need to see where the money's really going." Kendrick counted the bills quickly, eyes lighting up with greed and professional challenge. "For that money, I'll have it by tomorrow morning," he said. "But if this blows back, we're both finished." He took something that wasn't his. I said simply, "Now I'm taking everything." I spent the rest of the day at my actual office going through the motions while my mind stayed focused on the war I was waging in secret. My assistant brought files. Clients called with crises that suddenly felt trivial compared to my own. I approved strategies, made decisions, signed off on settlements, and kept my face calm while thinking about Brianna probably being in Cedric's office at that exact moment. A week ago, that thought would have destroyed me, but I was not that person anymore. That version of Damian Cross, who believed in fairness and rules, was gone. By early evening, Kendrick called. "You're not going to believe what I found," he said. "This man is dirtier than he looks in public. Where do you want to send the files?" "Encrypted email," I said, "and you never saw any of it." "Saw what?" he replied, and I knew he understood the gravity. The files arrived an hour later. I spent the entire night in my home office, going through them with the same focus I used on major corporate investigations. Brianna knocked around 10 asking if I wanted dinner, and I told her I was dealing with a client emergency. She sighed and went back to watching TV, probably texting Cedric about how absent I was while I built the bomb that would vaporize them both. What I found was incriminating in a way that almost felt like a gift. Cedric was not just having an affair. He was running a criminal operation disguised as a media company. He had been systematically siphoning money from Yvette's charitable foundation for 3 years, moving funds through U.S. shell companies and layered transactions to hide gambling debts that exceeded $2 million. There were emails discussing payoffs to journalists, evidence of insider trading conversations, and communications proving he had slept with multiple employees over the past decade, including some tied to settlement payouts. But the most valuable detail was buried in Cedric's personal calendar. He had a standing appointment every Thursday afternoon at an exclusive gun range in the suburbs. Yvette had a matching appointment. They went separately, never together, which told me their marriage was hollow in ways the public did not see. That meant Yvette spent Thursday afternoons shooting targets while her husband ran around destroying lives. And if I knew anything about former prosecutors, they appreciated evidence and despised being played for fools. I had never met Yvette properly, only seen her at charity events where she moved with the calm precision of someone used to hostile rooms. She was 46, carried herself with confidence, and dressed in a way that suggested old money rather than flashy new wealth. The kind of woman who probably suspected her husband was trash, but had been waiting for the right moment to act. Thursday came quickly. I told Brianna I had meetings all day and watched her face brighten, knowing she would immediately call Cedric to arrange an afternoon at whatever hotel they were using. I drove to the gun range, a private facility that catered to wealthy people who wanted privacy. The membership fee alone was $20,000 a year, which told me everything about the clientele. I found Yvette in Lane 7 working through a magazine on a Sig Sauer with the precision that comes from serious training. She wore designer athletic wear and shooting glasses. Her stance was perfect as she put round after round into the center mass of the paper target. I waited until she was reloading before approaching, because interrupting someone handling a firearm is a good way to get hurt. "Yvette Vaughn," I said. She turned, eyes assessing whether I was a threat. "Damian Cross," she replied. "We met briefly at the pediatric cancer fundraiser last year. You're in corporate crisis management. Your wife works for my husband." The way she said my husband carried enough ice to freeze the Great Lakes. "Can we talk somewhere private?" I asked. "I have information you need to see, and I promise you want to hear it before you finish your session." She studied me for a long moment, and I could see her prosecutor instincts working, analyzing tone, posture, and intent. Whatever she saw must have convinced her, because she nodded once and led me to a private conference room, the range kept for members. We sat across from each other, and I pulled out a folder containing printouts of financial records, screenshots of messages, and a clean breakdown of Cedric's activities. "Your husband is sleeping with my wife," I said without preamble, sliding the evidence across the table. "They've been having an affair for 7 months. But that's not why I'm here. Cedric has been stealing from your charitable foundation to cover gambling debts and payoffs. He's moved over $2 million through layered structures. And if I can find it, federal investigators can too." Yvette's face remained neutral as she went through the documents, but her hands tightened on the papers until her knuckles turned white. She read every page methodically. When she finally looked up, her expression was carved from stone. "Why bring this to me instead of the authorities?" "Because I want more than justice," I replied honestly. "I want total destruction." Cedric took something from me while mocking me behind my back, thinking he was untouchable because of his money and power. But he underestimated who I am and what I can do. And you, Yvette, are not just his wife. You're the owner of 49% of On Media stock through your family trust. You're the nuclear option. She set the papers down and went back to her lane, loaded a fresh magazine, and fired 15 rounds into a new target with mechanical precision. Every shot hit center mass in a grouping tight enough to be covered by a small card. When she was done, she cleared the weapon, turned back to me, and smiled in a way that would have terrified men who mistake calm for softness. "What exactly are you proposing, Mr. Cross?" "An alliance," I said. "We don't just divorce our cheating spouses. We destroy them completely. Financially, socially, professionally. We take everything and leave them with nothing. And we make them believe we're doing exactly what they did to us, which will push them into mistakes." "You want to fake an affair to destabilize them," she said, catching on immediately. "Make them paranoid while we position ourselves." "Exactly," I replied. "I've spent 15 years dismantling people professionally. You spent years prosecuting criminals and building cases they cannot escape. Together, we're a weapon they can't defend against." She walked back over and extended her hand. "Meet tomorrow to discuss details. I assume you have a plan." "Several," I said, shaking her hand. "The question is how far you're comfortable going." "Mr. Cross," she replied, "I'm comfortable with annihilation as long as it stays legal." We met the following evening at a steakhouse in the Gold Coast that had private rooms and staff trained to value discretion. Yvette arrived dressed for power, not seduction. A black dress that looked tailored, jewelry that was old family pieces, not flashy purchases. We ordered wine and ribeyes and talked about destruction like other people talk about vacation plans. "Cedric knows I'm aware of previous affairs," Yvette said, swirling her glass. "What he doesn't know is I've been gathering evidence for years, waiting for the right moment. I stayed because divorce without leverage would have left me chasing hidden assets while his attorneys buried everything. But if he's committed crimes I can prove, everything changes." She asked about my wife. I kept it clean. Brianna is a narcissist who confused luxury with love and assumed I was too controlled to notice betrayal. She works in PR, which means she's skilled at appearances and careless about long games. Right now she thinks she's clever, but she's walking into a trap she helped build. "What's phase 1?" she asked. "Financial pressure," I said. I cut off Brianna's access to our joint accounts under the guise of a bank audit. She's used to spending freely. Without money, she becomes unstable and takes it out on Cedric. Meanwhile, you and I start being seen together publicly. Nothing overt, but enough to trigger rumors. Cedric's ego can't handle the idea you might move on, and Brianna will panic when she thinks she's losing control. Yvette smiled. I like it. Psychological warfare before the assault. When do we start? Tonight, I said. I will freeze the accounts tomorrow morning. We need to be seen leaving here together. We spent 3 hours planning details with cold precision. I realized I was sitting across from someone who thought like I did. No theatrics, no wasted motion. Only outcomes. When we finally left the restaurant, I made sure we were seen by people who circulated in Chicago's social circles, including a photographer who was always hungry for gossip. The next morning, I called the bank and had them flag our joint accounts for suspicious activity. The whole would make Brianna's cards decline until the investigation cleared. It was a fiction, but banks love caution, and I knew how to speak their language. I timed it just before her usual Friday shopping ritual on Oak Street. At noon, my phone rang. Brianna's voice was sharp with humiliation. Damien, my card isn't working. The bank says there's a hold on our accounts. I'm standing in Chanel with 3 bags, and the sales associate is looking at me like I'm a fraud. The bank called me this morning about unusual activity patterns. I said calmly, reviewing a contract as if her panic were background noise. They need to verify some transactions before releasing holds. It's probably nothing, but institutions are paranoid. It'll be cleared in a week or 2. A week or 2? She snapped. I need access to money now. Do you actually need it or do you want it? I asked. Use the emergency card for essentials. The emergency card had a limit low enough to sting. She hung up. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text from Kendrick. Your package is live and spreading. ETA 12 hours until critical mass. That meant the information I had carefully leaked to the right people about irregularities at Vaughn Media was beginning to circulate where it mattered. By tomorrow, Cedric would be dealing with board members, investors, and attorneys asking questions he could not dodge. That night was the annual Children's Hospital Charity Gala, an event where Chicago's elite wrote checks and wore clothes that cost more than most people's yearly income. Brianna had been excited for weeks, seeing it as a chance to show off. She had already bought a new dress before the accounts were frozen, which saved her from an even deeper humiliation. We arrived at the Four Seasons ballroom fashionably late. I could see Brianna was already on edge from a bank situation. She kept checking her phone, likely texting Cedric for reassurance, not knowing he was about to have a very different kind of evening. The room was full of politicians, business owners, and old money families. Cedric stood near the bar, holding court, laughing at jokes that probably were not funny. When he saw us enter, his expression shifted in a way most people would miss. He was smart enough to be wary of me, but arrogant enough to believe he was still in control. I excused myself from Brianna and walked straight toward him with the kind of calm confidence that makes people move aside without thinking. Cedric, I said, extending my hand. He took it because refusing would cause a scene. I squeezed just hard enough for him to feel it. Not enough to draw attention, but enough to send a message. His smile stayed in place, but his eyes flickered. Glad I caught you, I said. I've been meaning to discuss security protocols for media companies. Digital infrastructure is fragile. One wrong click, and suddenly what you thought was private becomes public. Always good to see you, Damien, he replied, extracting his hand. I'm sure our team has it handled. Sometimes the threats come from inside, I said softly. People you trust have access to things they shouldn't. You'd be amazed what a motivated professional can find. His face tightened. But before he could respond, Yvette materialized beside us in a dress that looked expensive without trying. She looked magnificent. Every inch a sophisticated woman who didn't need her husband's status. She glanced at Cedric like he was furniture, then turned to me with genuine warmth. Damien, I'm so glad you're here, she said. I want to discuss that foundation audit we talked about. Can I steal you for a moment? She linked her arm through mine. Without waiting for an answer, I felt Cedric's gaze burning into my back as we walked away. Brianna was watching from across the room. her expression confused and panicked. She had just seen her boss's wife walk off with her husband like it was natural. The seed of doubt landed exactly where it needed to. Yvette and I spent the next 20 minutes talking animatedly in a visible corner, occasionally laughing at things that were not especially funny, making sure we were seen by the right people. "You're good at this," she murmured behind her wine glass. "The performance, emotional displays are inefficient," I replied. "They warn targets that something is wrong. Better to smile while twisting the knife. It hurts more when they finally realize what's happening." We circulated separately after that, and I watched Cedric try to approach Yvette, only for her to drift away each time. She was executing her role perfectly, creating distance without overt humiliation. Brianna kept trying to catch my attention, but I stayed busy, networking and acting like nothing mattered. By the end of the evening, she was practically vibrated with anxiety, and Cedric looked like he wanted to strangle someone. The pressure was working. The next morning, I got the call I had been waiting for. One of Cedric's board members, Monica Reynolds, a venture capitalist I had helped during a previous crisis, wanted to meet for coffee. She was concerned about rumors circulating about financial irregularities at Vaughn Media and wanted to know if I had heard anything. We met downtown in a cafe chosen for privacy. Monica did not waste time. She ordered a double espresso and got straight to business. "Damien, I trust your judgment," she said. "There are whispers about Cedric moving money in ways that don't make sense. His wife's foundation has discrepancies. Combined with some concerning communications, I'm wondering if we have a serious problem." "You have a serious problem," I confirmed. "I've seen evidence of systematic theft from the foundation, layered structures designed to hide losses, and a pattern that suggests Cedric thinks he's above consequences. If I were on the board, I'd call an emergency meeting and demand answers before regulators get involved." She leaned back, face grim. "Can you prove any of this?" "I can point you in the right direction," I said. "Your accountants and attorneys can do the rest. But if this goes public before you handle it internally, the stock will crater and everyone will be damaged. You need to move fast." "How fast?" "By Friday," I said. "Call the meeting. Present the evidence. Force him out before he destroys more value. And between you and me, Yvette has been gathering evidence for years. She might be your strongest ally." Monica pulled out her phone and began making calls before I finished my coffee. The machine was moving. That evening, Brianna came home in tears. Cedric had called her into his office and accused her of leaking information to the press, screaming about loyalty and betrayal in ways that probably violated several employment laws. Their affair was fracturing under pressure exactly as I predicted, because people like them only value each other when things are easy. The moment real danger appears, they turn on each other. "He thinks I betrayed him," she sobbed, makeup running down her face. "A month ago that might have crushed me. Now I felt cold satisfaction. He says I'm the reason the board is investigating, that I must have accessed files I wasn't supposed to see. Damien, I could lose my job." "Did you access files you weren't supposed to?" I asked mildly, enjoying the way she squirmed under the question. "Of course not," she said quickly. "But he doesn't believe me. Everyone at the office is looking at me like I'm some kind of spy. This is a nightmare. Maybe you should consider whether working for Cedric is worth all this stress." I suggested. "There are other PR firms." She looked at me like I suggested she cut off her own hand. "I've worked too hard to build my reputation at Vaughn Media. This will blow over once he realizes I had nothing to do with it." I almost laughed at how wrong she was. She still believed she had a future there, or with him. She did not know that within 72 hours, both would be gone from her life permanently. Friday arrived with Chicago's cold clarity, wind off the lake cutting through everything without mercy. I spent the morning reviewing unrelated contracts, but my mind was on an emergency board meeting at Vaughn Media. Monica called the night before confirmed they had what they needed, including documentation from Yvette that Cedric could not refute. His reign would end today. Brianna left for work early, probably hoping to patch things up with him before the implosion. I considered warning her not to go in, but decided witnessing his downfall would teach her more than any speech I could give. By noon, my phone started buzzing with messages from contacts in the Chicago business scene. Cedric Vaughn had been fired, forced out by the board, escorted by security. His access was revoked. His executive parking space was reassigned. The official story was pursuing other opportunities, but everyone knew that meant he'd been caught doing something severe. I sent a single text to Yvette. Phase 2 complete. Phase 3 begins now. Her response came instantly. Meet me at the office at 3. Vaughn Media headquarters was a glass tower in the Loop. I had been there before for events, but walking in today felt like entering conquered territory. Yvette was waiting in what had been Cedric's executive office, except now his personal items were gone and her belongings were already moving in. She stood by the window overlooking downtown Chicago. The board appointed me interim CO an hour ago, she said. They want fresh leadership while they search for a permanent replacement. I told them I'll consider the role long-term if the crisis management consultant I hired stabilizes the company. That consultant is you. I nodded once, absorbing the shift like any other operation. When do I start? Monday, she said. 6-month contract at your rate, plus a performance bonus tied to recovery. Full access to everything. Every file, every system, every piece of data Cedric tried to hide. If there's more, you'll find it, and we'll use it to insulate ourselves from fallout. She asked where Cedric was. Probably in his apartment, she said, drunk and furious, trying to figure out who destroyed him. She told me his lawyers called seeking negotiation. She told him to go through her attorneys and expect nothing. I'm filing for divorce Monday morning, she said. Adultery, fraud, and whatever else my team can support. Between the prenup and his conduct, he'll be lucky to keep his watch. My phone buzzed. Brianna's number. I let it go to voicemail. I already knew what she would say. When I checked later, I heard her crying about being fired, about Cedric cutting her off, about not understanding why everything was collapsing. She asked if I could come pick her up from the building where she was stranded with her items in a cardboard box. I let her sit with that fear while I worked with Yvette on optics and transition strategy. We needed a united front. The wronged wife taking control, bringing in a respected fixer to stabilize the company. Investors love a clean narrative. By the time I got home, Brianna's car was in the garage, which meant she had gotten back on her own. I found her on the couch surrounded by tissues, eyes red, still wearing the designer suit she put on that morning, expecting a normal day. The box sat by the door like a marker of her career's death. They fired me, she said redundantly. Cedric's gone too. The company is in chaos. I don't understand. Everything was fine last week, and now it's all falling apart. That's what happens when foundations are rotten, I replied, setting down my briefcase. Eventually the structure collapses. She looked at me like she was starting to connect dots, but could not see the full picture yet. Why aren't you more surprised? It's like you expected this. I work in crisis management, I said. Nothing surprises me anymore. The real question is what you're going to do now. I'll find another job, she said, trying to sound confident. I'm good at what I do. PR firms are always hiring. What she did not know was that I had spent the previous week making quiet calls to major PR firms and recruiters, warning them Brianna Cross was associated with the Vaughn Media scandal and could be a liability. Nothing defamatory, nothing actionable, just professional caution. Her name was already poison. You should update your resume, I suggested, and maybe adjust lifestyle expenses until you secure employment. Things are going to be tight. Tight, she snapped. We have money. You make good money. Why are you acting like this is a crisis? Because you've been spending like we have 2 incomes. I said evenly. Now we don't. Your access to joint accounts is still limited pending the bank investigation. And watching the budget is smart. The market is uncertain. I watched panic start to crystallize in her eyes. No job, no access to money, no Cedric to run to. She was trapped and the walls were closing in. The weekend was tense. Brianna spent most of it on her phone applying for jobs and getting more frustrated as silence replaced the quick validation she was used to. I spent it at Yvette's office preparing for my new role, going through files and building the public case that would justify every change we were about to make. We worked well together. Two predators who understood effective hunting requires patience and precision. Sunday night, I came home late and found Brianna waiting up, which was unusual. She was drinking wine straight from the bottle, a sign her control was cracking. Her makeup was smudged, her hair messy, and her expression mixed desperation with calculation. "We need to talk," she said. I recognized that voice, the one she used when she wanted something and planned to manipulate me into giving it. "I know things have been stressful," she said. "Maybe I haven't been the best wife. Work has been demanding and Cedric was putting pressure on me. And I felt like you were always focused on your career. We've been drifting." I sat across from her, face neutral. "What are you trying to say?" "Maybe we should reconnect," she said. "Go away for a weekend. Turn off our phones. Focus on each other like we used to. I don't want to lose what we have." The audacity nearly made me laugh. She was trying to seduce me back into complacency now that her other option had evaporated. If I had not known about the affair, it might have worked. I might have felt guilty about being distant and agreed to a romantic getaway that would have secured her access to my resources again. "That sounds nice," I said carefully. "But maybe we should wait until your job situation stabilizes. Expensive vacations don't make sense on one income." Her face fell. Fear flashed through her features. "Damien, why are you being like this? It's like you don't care about our marriage. Like I'm just an expense you're trying to cut. Is that how you think I see you?" I asked, genuinely curious. "I don't know what to think," she said. "You're cold lately. I need to know if we're okay, if you still love me, if this marriage means anything." I looked at her for a long moment, remembering the messages where she laughed at me with Cedric. The old me might have felt conflicted. The new me felt nothing but cold satisfaction. "We're fine." I lied smoothly. "I'm stressed. Let's table the vacation and focus on getting you back to work." She seemed reassured enough to go to bed. I stayed up late finalizing documents that would end our marriage in the most financially devastating way possible. The prenup gave me enormous leverage, especially with her unemployment and evidence of her affair. She would leave with nothing but what she could carry. Monday morning arrived with the weight of finality. I woke early, went for a run along the lakefront while the city was still quiet, and prepared for the day that would begin Brianna's true punishment. I came back, showered, dressed in my best suit, and loaded 3 suitcases into my car while she slept. Then I returned inside and placed a single key on the kitchen counter, along with an envelope containing divorce papers and a note. "Brianna," it read, "I know about Cedric. I've known for weeks. The locks have been changed. This key opens the door one final time, so you can collect personal items this afternoon between 2 and 4. After that, this key will no longer work. Your attorney should contact mine. The divorce will proceed according to the prenuptial agreement we signed. The home and accounts belong solely to me. You have until the end of the month to find alternative housing. Security cameras are installed. Do not take anything that does not belong to you." I left before she woke, driving to my new office at Vaughn Media where real work awaited. Around 10 a.m., my phone started ringing with calls from Brianna. I ignored them. Then came texts, moving from confused to furious to bargaining. I read them with the same detachment I use when analyzing corporate communications during investigations. By noon, she threatened to come to my office, but I had already alerted building security. She was not to be allowed inside. At 3 p.m., my phone rang from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Damien, please." Brianna's voice was raw from crying. "We need to talk. You can't throw away 5 years without letting me explain. I made a mistake. We can work through this." "There's nothing to explain," I replied. "You slept with your boss, mocked me behind my back, and lied to my face for 7 months. Those aren't mistakes. They're choices." "But I love you," she insisted. "Cedric meant nothing. He was just attention because you were distant. If you had been more present, none of this would have happened." The blame shift was predictable. "So it's my fault," I said. "I worked hard to provide the lifestyle you demanded, and that drove you into another man's bed. That's not what I'm saying, she said quickly. I'm saying we both made mistakes, and we can fix it if you stop being stubborn. I'll prove I can be the wife you need. Our marriage ended the first time you kissed him, I said. Everything after that was you living in a house that wasn't yours anymore. She cried harder. Where am I supposed to go? I don't have money. I don't have a job. My friends won't answer. Are you really throwing me out with nothing? You're a grown woman with a degree and experience. I said evenly. You'll figure it out. You may have to sell designer items and live differently. Consider it self-sufficiency. Her tone shifted to venom. You planned this, she hissed. All of it. You knew, and you set me up to lose everything. What kind of person does that? The kind who neutralizes threats methodically. I replied, you want to play games. You didn't realize you were playing against someone who does this professionally. I hung up and blocked her number. I felt nothing. That evening, I met Yvette for dinner at a downtown restaurant that required reservations weeks in advance. We had legitimate business to discuss restructuring and communication strategy, but we also needed to be seen together by the right people. The narrative required Chicago's elite to understand we were aligned. How did Brianna take it? Yvette asked over oysters, her tone mildly curious rather than sympathetic. Crying, manipulation, blame-shifting, threats. I said, standard. Yvette nodded. Cedric tried to come to the house yesterday, she said casually. I had the police remove him for trespassing. His lawyer called demanding access to personal property. According to the prenup, he can take clothes and his watches. Everything else stays. How long until the criminal investigation starts? I asked. The board is cooperating with federal investigators, she said. They're treating Cedric as a rogue actor who hid activities from oversight that protects the company and isolates him legally. The forensic accountants found additional undisclosed accounts that suggests he was preparing to hide assets during divorce. At minimum, it's obstruction. We talked about logistics for another hour. Underneath, it was a growing awareness that we genuinely enjoyed each other's company, not in the needy way that leads to affairs, but with the cold respect of two people who recognize competence. She was brilliant and ruthless and uninterested in pretending. In another life, we might have been friends or enemies, probably both. The next weeks moved quickly. I threw myself into rebuilding Vaughn Media's reputation, firing executives who enabled Cedric, implementing oversight, and giving carefully scripted interviews about transparency and accountability. The stock stabilized, then began to climb as investors realized the company was more valuable without its corrupt founder. Brianna tried to contact me through intermediaries, mutual acquaintances who thought they were helping. I shut it down politely, but firmly. Her lawyer tried to challenge the prenup, claiming unequal power, but the agreement was airtight. I heard through contacts she was working as a receptionist at a dental office, living in a studio apartment in Phoenix, a neighborhood she would have mocked months earlier. Any guilt I might have felt evaporated when I remembered the messages where she laughed at me. Cedric's situation got worse. The investigation expanded to securities violations, fraud, and foundation theft. His lawyers fought for a plea deal that would keep him out of prison, but it required forfeiting assets and accepting a felony. His reputation collapsed. Friends vanished at the speed of rats leaving a sinking ship. I heard he was living with his mother in the suburbs, a pathetic end for a man who believed he was untouchable. 3 months after everything exploded, I got a call from an unlisted number late at night. I debated not answering, but curiosity won. Damian Cross, a rough voice said, rage barely controlled underneath. You think you're clever, taking my company, my wife, destroying everything I built. Cedric, I replied, unsurprised he finally connected the dots. To be accurate, I didn't take your company. Your own conduct and your wife's ownership stake did. I just helped with the transition. You orchestrated this, he snapped. The investigation, the board turning, even Brianna getting caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. You played us. Chess is a poor metaphor. I said evenly. It assumes equal positions and fixed rules. What I did was controlled demolition. I identified structural weaknesses and applied pressure until everything collapsed. The affair was just a trigger. You built the collapse over years. I could make you suffer, he said, and the violence in his tone sounded real. You took everything. I have nothing left to lose. That's not true, I replied calmly. You still have choices. Choose carefully. I document threats and I respond to them. The line went quiet. You're a monster, he finally said. No, I said, I'm just better at this than you. I told him to stop calling and stop threatening. He hung up without agreeing, which I took as the closest thing he could offer. I immediately forwarded a record of the call to my attorney and to law enforcement. So the threat was documented. Desperate men sometimes surprise you. I increased my security protocols and told Yvette to do the same. 4 days later, Cedric tried to have me attacked in the parking garage of my building. 3 men with baseball bats, the kind of hired muscle who assume a corporate executive will curl up and beg. They thought they were jumping a soft target. What they did not know was that I had served in the Marine Corps before my corporate career, that I maintained training, because paranoia is a professional requirement, and that I had been expecting something like this. The fight lasted less than 2 minutes. I used control force to put them down, then called the police, gave a statement about being attacked, and mentioned the high-profile corporate crisis I had been involved in, including threats from the former CEO days earlier. The investigators did their job. Financial traces connected the attackers to a payment source tied to one of Cedric's known shell entities. The link was obvious enough that Cedric's legal problems multiplied overnight. I drove straight to his mother's house in the suburbs, still wearing my torn suit, knuckles bruised, expression calm. The door opened and Cedric stood there looking 10 years older than when I first met him, defeat carved into his face. I did not shout. I just looked at him until he understood exactly how badly he had miscalculated. You're going to prison, I said quietly, not only for fraud. You're going to prison because you were stupid enough to attack me after I warned you. He swallowed hard. Please, he said, and the word carried desperation. I wasn't thinking straight. I was angry. I'll tell the police it was a misunderstanding. I never authorized anyone to hurt you. I leaned against the door frame like we were discussing the weather. Here's what's going to happen, I said. You will turn yourself in. You will accept responsibility. You will liquidate remaining assets and put them toward restitution tied to the foundation. And after you serve your sentence, you will disappear from Chicago. You will not contact me, Yvette, Brianna, or anyone else involved. His eyes were wet. Why? He asked. People have affairs every day. You could have divorced and move on. Because you thought you could take without consequence, I said. Because you mocked me while you did it. Because you used Yvette's reputation as cover while you stole. Someone needed to stop you, and I was positioned to do it. I left him standing there and drove away. 2 weeks later, public records reflected what everyone in Chicago already suspected. Cedric Vaughn pleaded guilty to multiple charges, including conspiracy tied to the garage attack and financial crimes connected to the foundation. He accepted a lengthy sentence as part of a cooperation agreement that helped investigators unwind the rest of the scheme. The last I heard, he was in a medium security facility in southern Illinois working in the prison library, trying to survive the life he earned. Brianna's ending was quieter, but no less complete. The divorce was finalized within months. She received essentially nothing beyond what the law required. She moved permanently to Phoenix to live near family, taking a job in restaurant management because her corporate reputation was unsalvageable. I heard through mutual acquaintances she was dating a mid-level manager and living a life that would have horrified the woman she used to be. I hoped she learned something, but mostly I stopped thinking about her at all. As for Yvette and me, something unexpected happened. What started as strategy transformed into something real. We discovered we enjoyed each other's company beyond the shared satisfaction of watching our enemies collapse. She was brilliant, darkly funny, and unimpressed by wealth and status. We could debate policy, talk business, or sit in comfortable silence reading separate books. A year after everything ended, she asked me to move into the penthouse that used to belong to Cedric, now redecorated so thoroughly it held no trace of him. I agreed, not because I needed a place to live, but because I wanted to wake up next to her every morning. It was not the desperate love people write songs about. It was something deeper and more sustainable, built on respect and shared values. Vaughn Media flourished under Yvette's leadership because she focused on actual value creation instead of ego. I continued consulting while serving as her strategic advisor, catching problems before they became scandals. We never married. Neither of us saw the point after what we survived, but we built something better than marriage, a partnership between equals who understood loyalty, competence, and mutual respect mattered more than any legal contract. People whispered at events, trying to label what we were. We never clarified. Let them speculate. Standing on the balcony overlooking nighttime Chicago, the city stretched in lights and steel, I sometimes thought about the man I used to be, the one who believed in giving people the benefit of the doubt, in turning the other cheek. That man was unprepared for reality that predators exist, and they consume what they can. Yvette joined me with 2 glasses of bourbon, wearing one of my shirts because she liked the feel. "Any regrets?" she asked. She already knew the answer. "None," I said. "They built on sand and acted surprised when it collapsed. We just helped gravity do its work faster." She smiled, that calm, predatory expression that made me feel understood in a way I never had before. We clinked glasses and watched Chicago continue its eternal dance of ambition and consequence. Somewhere out there, Brianna and Cedric lived diminished lives, still wondering how everything went so wrong so fast. But that wasn't my problem anymore. I built something new from betrayal, and I did it with someone who understood exactly when to push. Now, be honest, did they deserve that ending? Comment yes or no, and tell me which part shocked you the most. And if you want another story where betrayal gets paid back with precision, subscribe for more full-length stories like this, because the next one goes even darker. The end.